Hey there, and welcome to the 8th annual Source Song Festival.
While you're joining us our usual time, the first week of August, we assure you we have been working for a very long time on this very special and different festival. And actually, our students have been with us this year since May.
This year, Source also created a new position within our festival, the Poet in Residence, and we are thrilled that Minnesota State Poet Laureate Joyce Sutphin is the first to fill this role.
The students were introduced to Joyce in May, and they were sent her new collection of poetry, Carrying Water to the Field, where our 8 Min Song composers chose 8 poems to set and collaborate with our 16 student Min duos.
This type of long-term collaboration is something that we at Source had sought to create since we began. And with the surprise benefit of our constant Zoom calls and asynchronous music making this past year, we were finally able to accomplish this goal.
Both tonight and Wednesday night, you will hear an interview with Joyce and a board member of Source and local poet Anna George Meek talking about Joyce's inspiration, reading some of her poems, and just talk about the process of what it's like to work with musicians and hear her poems in music. You'll hear 4 on the first night, 4 on the second night, all curated and collaborated with our students, Min Duo and Min Song.
After these concerts, please join us on our Facebook page for a live Q&A with Joyce, Anna, and the 4 composers featured each night. On our website, you can also find places for you to donate. Although this concert is free, if you are inspired by the songs you hear, please consider making a donation in any amount.
Source is a generative force, and we are committed to the creation of new works. We are also very inspired, grateful, and very humbled that you would join us for tonight, and we hope to see you throughout the rest of the week.
Hi, I'm Anna George Meek, and I'm a poet, a mezzo-soprano, and a board member of Source Song Festival. And I'm here with Minnesota Poet Laureate and friend Joyce Sutphin, who is also Poet Laureate of the 2021 Source Song Festival. Joyce's first book won the Barnard New Women's Poets Prize in 1995. And since then, she's published 7 books, which have both been finalists for the Minnesota Book Award and won the Minnesota Book Award. She's also received a McKnight Artist Fellowship and a Minnesota State Arts Board Fellowship, and since 2011 has served as the Minnesota State Poet Laureate. She is Professor Emeritus of Gustavus Adolphus. And her latest book, it's your latest book, right?
Yeah.
Carrying Water from the Field is a new and selected collection from which the 2021 participants will be drawing for their art song texts. So welcome, Joyce.
Nice to be here, Anna.
One of the things that we were talking about was that it always appears on all the things, all the ways in which you're online in your bio. It's always mentioned that you grew up on a farm in Stearns County. And you had mentioned some things about why that's of interest.
You know, I thought of more even as you were talking right now. I just feel that I should bear witness to a way of life that is really, for the most part, disappeared. My father had a 160-acre kind of classical, that's the size of the settlers, you know, the land and who it belongs to and all of that. But I think because I knew that particular piece of land so well, and I would say until I was 5 or 6, I roamed those grounds from the woods to the meadows to the hay barns to the, you know, the mysterious sheds where there, you know, were big spiders and interest. You know, it was it was fun and terror. and you know, I mean, there's some accidents.
It sounds like a poem.
Yeah, there is a poem in here called My Luck, in which I get run over by a tractor and have a huge dog kind of wrestle with me, and it broke a bone in my leg, and then I fell off of a roof. Well, I sort of leapt from the roof, but you know,
There's a story.
The farm is in a place where now it's surrounded by all kinds of developments. It's the last holdout, you know, in this area. And so it's a really special place for, lots of reasons. And I suppose that was my vocabulary was very limited, you know, in those days. I mean, it had to do with rocks and gravel and, you know, all those kinds of things, not so much books. And once books came into my life, then things changed. You know.
So I think of how you were like saying that in the vocabulary that you had as you walked through the farm and the barn and the spiders and you love sound and birds, and I mean I wonder to what degree the farm in some ways introduced you to sound. That was those were your first lessons in poetry.
They were. I mean, tractors running, and milk machines pulsing, and you could. It was a little rhythm, you know, kind of like the air compression, and just the bells or the chain, the little number on the cows when they came in, it would ring. You know.
You had no choice but to become a poet. Of course you became a poet. And you have a poem called about the farm.
Oh, I have a poem called The Farm, and I was telling you that I think it's the only mythological, over-the-top, extravagant, hyperbolic kind of poem I've written about the farm, but I think it does what I wanted to, though, and my father used to hear a poem and say, "You've got a really good imagination, Joyce." So here, The Farm. My father's farm is an apple blossomer. He keeps his hills in dandelion carpet and weaves a lane of lilacs between the rose and the jack in the pulpits. His sleek cows ripple in the pastures. The dog and purple iris keep watch at the garden's end. His farm is rolling thunder, a lightning bolt on the horizon. His crops suck rain from the sky and swallow the smoldering sun. His fields are oceans of heat where waves of gold beat the burning shore. A red fox pauses under the birch trees. A shadow is in the river's bend. When the hawk circles the land, my father's grain fields whirl beneath it. Owls gather to sing in his woods, and the deer run his golden meadow. My father's farm is an icicle, a hillside of white powder. He parts the snowy sea and smooths away the valleys. He cultivates his rows of starlight and drags the crescent moon through dark, unfurrowed fields. I will say that when I read a poem from the beginning of the book, it feels wordy to me. It feels this one isn't too bad, but there's a lot more kind of description than I use now
about the book about writing a new and selected. This is the volume that the participants are drawing from. How is writing, and I'm using that word in quotation marks, a new and selected different from writing any other volume?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know we only have so much time.
It's more fun than a regular volume because, you have the structure there.
So the book is organized from you mentioned that the farm is from the beginning of the book,
Right.
and it feels strange now to you in comparison to some of your more recent work. So the book is organized
Chronologically. Yeah, and we're going to try to read some poems that people have chosen for the source song.
Yeah.
Of the cave, it says here, and I think that is almost universally the wrong title. I mean, it's just From Out the Cave.
From Out the Cave.
Not I don't know why it matters, but I guess every word in a poem matters. It should. I mean, there shouldn't be a word out of place, and I think that's the place I've, at least in my work, I've come to want that, and it makes for a lot more revision, I can tell you that.
And we'll talk about this, but about the difficulty of handing over then your carefully sculpted words to a composer. And I also have had I've done actually several versions. I've had poems set by composers, but I've also been commissioned to write for a particular thing, and in all of those cases the composer is in some way, with permission, jimmied with the language. And I guess I think about Anne Bradstreet, like writing poems about her poems being like children, and she would dress them the best that she could and make sure that they were clean, but then when they went out into the world, they were their own creatures.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I do remember that, and Bradstreet saying that. And I also want to say that it might be nice if a listener referred to their memory of that old story of that Plato had about the cave and the people that were chained, and naming shadows on the wall, and then were at some point released from their chains and told that they should go now back out to out of the mouth of the cave and see reality, see the blue sky and the leaves and everything. And it was quite painful for some people, and some people actually decided to go back and name those shadows. And so that's the cave that I was thinking about, and it's a very rhetorical kind of structure. It's when, kind of all these conditionals, and then finally, then, and it happens. And so listen for that. Even though it's free verse and continuous form, as I really hadn't discovered stanzas or meter, counting meter, or anything formal like that. So, From Out the Cave. When you've been at war with yourself for so many years that you've forgotten why, when you've been driving for hours and only gradually begin to realize that you have lost the way, when you've cut hastily into the fabric, when you have signed papers in distraction, when it has been centuries since you watched the sunset or the rainfall, and the clouds drifting overhead pass as flat as anything on a postcard, when in the middle of these everyday nightmares you understand that you could wake up, you could turn and go back to the last thing you remember doing with your whole heart, that passionate kiss, the brilliant drop of love rolling along the tongue of a green leaf. Then you wake. You stumble from your cave, blinking in the sun, naming every shadow as it slips. So that really happened to me, and I think it must happen to a lot of people these days, that on the road to Damascus, you just feel like everything's changed. And it's great. And the shadows slip away.
There's a lot more compression and blank space and use of stanza form in your later work. But
Yeah.
one thing that's constant is that music. And I wondered if you might say a few things about how do you, when you're writing, do you think
Yeah.
about the music of the language?
Well, I don't know exactly. I could say that music was important, and my mother went to college at a time when there weren't any grants or anything, and she really had to work at a place that she could stay at, and then sort of work some extra to get tuition. What really stopped her was that she couldn't read music.
Oh.
And she was wanting to be an elementary school teacher, and so the very first thing wasn't so much learning to read words, but learning to read notes. I just love sound, and I love the sound of birds and the wind, and it is musical to me. I do not. I've never been in a real choir. Our family tended toward the instrument side, so and there really was a music man who came to town and started a school, like the whole band thing. It's just so much like the music man.
Did he use the think system?
Probably. I will say that I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan, and I also love Chopin and Bach and anybody, new composers. I'm gonna love this. Playfulness is, I don't know, for musicians, it must be like so important too. I mean, you have to be able to just indulge and I mean, I love words too and definitions and everything, but that sound is really important. Yeah.
When I think about singing, because I'm also a singer, I've had a number of voice teachers say that it has to feel good. If it doesn't feel good, you're not singing right.
Ooh, I like that.
Isn't that true
must
for
be
poetry?
true for poetry too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the next poem that?
Oh, yeah. The next one is "Living in the Body," and that is. I'm always happy to return to this poem. I have written down here September 30th, 1992. Okay, that adds, lots of years here, but that's the day I wrote the draft of this poem, and I was sitting at Cup of Joe's, which was the coffee shop that was just down the street from the Hungry Mind. And I remember that I just wrote it pretty much in one fell swoop.
Wow.
And I because once I had the concept, well, I'm going to read the poem, and then once I had the concept, it sort of made, it just drew from things that were ready on the ingredient shelf. Sometimes, do you ever have that feeling, you've probably been getting ready to write a certain poem for a long time, and you've experienced things and kind of drawn your conclusions about them, and you've maybe talked to a good friend about it and everything, and then all of a sudden in the poem, there it is.
Yeah.
Living in the body. Body is something you need in order to stay on this planet, and you only get one. And no matter which one you get, it will not be satisfactory. It will not be beautiful enough. It will not be fast enough. It will not keep on for days at a time, but will pull you down into a sleepy swamp and demand apples and coffee and chocolate cake. Body is the thing you have to carry from one day into the next. Always the same eyebrows over the same eyes and the same skin when you look in the mirror, and the same creaky knee when you get up from the floor, and the same wrist under the watch band. The changes you can make are small and costly. Better to leave it as it is. Body is the thing that you have to leave eventually. You know that because you have seen others do it. Others who were once like you, living inside their pile of bones and flesh, smiling at you, loving you, leaning in the doorway, talking to you for hours, and then one day they are gone. No forwarding address. So, I always sort of hesitated on that last line, no forwarding address. Not a line, it's the last sentence. And I think I like it now. For a while I was not sure.
It's a slightly different tone from the rest
Yeah,
of the poem.
yeah.
It's funny. It's whimsical. It is. But
I thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for seeing that. That's good. That's good. I might have to try out another one on you later and see if you get that one. I think this one is a combination of what happened in, to my son-in-law, future son-in-law, who was going to UND in Grand Forks, and Alicia, who was at Gustavus, and there were fires and rains and flooding on his campus and your hometown, and so much to say about that. And then tornadoes hit St. Peter.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so that's somewhere way in the back. And
These were the floods of 97, right?
97, and then the tornado of 98, March 29th, 98.
In Grand Forks.
There's the lead in to this little poem that we've said way much more than the poem will say. But it's in the wake. Everything I saved from the flood went into the fire. One thing to keep me warm, another because it was old and useless, and one just for the burning. I had dreams forgotten in the morning as I dressed and got on with my life. If I had to do it over again, I would do nothing the same. Now that it's over, I don't know what to make instead of a prayer. Now the roof's gone, I can't hear the sound of the rain. gone, I can't hear the sound of the This poem, The Cup, and make sure that I'm reading the right poem. Yeah. This one has a great, nice story for me because I wrote this poem when I was in Red Wing, Minnesota, and then Red Wing did the thing where a artist takes a poem and illustrates it or does something in reaction to it. So it turned out that Don picked my poem and made a piece out of it. So now there will be a wall hanging that Don did, the poem, and a beautiful song for this, The Cup. Yesterday in the cafe, how beautiful the cup that held your tea, the yellow tea in the clear glass and the flowers in the shimmering pouch. And how well you told the stories that fit into the hour, which lasted exactly as long as a cup of tea in the clear blue tint of the glass. And how comfortable, I thought, I've always felt with you, even in the rain, which you promised would come. I'm remembering the cup, how beautiful the cup in the yellow cafe.
Yesterday In the yellow cafe.
I have one last question, and it's a difficult one, and it's one we could talk about for hours. But you mentioned when we write about other pieces of artwork, and you talked also about how your poems have given rise to tapestry or weavings, and then songs, and so poetry sits in a family of many different kinds of arts. What is unique to poetry? What are the magic powers that poetry possesses?
I think all art fits that statement by Theodore Roethke, that is, art is the means we have of undoing the damage of haste. It's what everything else isn't. I think poetry can do that maybe a little bit better, maybe not better than music and singing, though. But I was just thinking of when I pick up a Emily Dickinson or a Shakespeare sonnet or any poem, I'm sort of inhabiting that voice, and breathing in the present and affirming those lines. They're kind of, it's almost like you breathe through poetry eternity.
I think maybe this is actually its kinship with music, because when I think of what I love about poetry most, I think about its associative properties, its ability to, in some ways, cast the experience of body and mind, which is not clear narrative. It's not something that can be enumerated. It's not. It doesn't have clear character. It's very impressionistic. Poetry, in its brevity, can take this very strange, simultaneously conflicting human experience and compress it so that we feel all those things all at once, not in any clear narrative, and it does feel visceral. It comes at the body and it comes at the heart, and then the brain can think its way through it. But is that unique to poetry? No, the other art form I think that can do that is music.
Yeah.
Joyce, thank you so much for this interview and for being Poet Laureate of Minnesota, and especially for being Poet Laureate of the 2021 Source Song Festival.
And thank you for coming out and enjoying the beautiful sunny summer day, and whatever has kept us from seeing each other all these years had better disappear, because I think we have a lot to say to each other.
I think so too.
Yeah.